In a small, humble village nestled in the valley between two towering mountains, there lived a man named Elias. He was poor, not just in material wealth, but also in the worldly possessions that many people take for granted. His house was a simple stone cottage, with a thatched roof that was always leaking when it rained. The walls, once strong and sturdy, now showed signs of wear, with cracks that let in the cold winds of winter. Yet, despite his poverty, Elias had something that no amount of money could ever buy. He had a heart full of kindness. Elias was a hard-working man who woke up before the sun had even begun to rise. He spent his days tending to his small patch of farmland, planting seeds, growing vegetables, and raising a few animals. His life was simple, but filled with labor. Every day, he worked from dawn until dusk, his hands rough from years of toiling in the soil. He never complained. But Elias's wealth was not to be measured in silver or gold. He was known throughout the village for his generosity and willingness to help others, even when he had little to give. He gave what he could, a loaf of bread to a neighbor in need, a warm fire on a cold winter's night, or a listening ear to those who needed it most. His kindness made him beloved by everyone, and his heart was rich, even though his pockets were empty. One crisp autumn morning, Elias was walking back from the market with a small bundle of vegetables he had sold to make a few coins. He had enough to buy a little food for his dinner, and perhaps a warm cloak to protect himself from the coming winter. As he walked along the dusty road leading back to his cottage, he noticed something unusual by the side of the path. There, lying in the dirt, was a pig. The animal was small, weak, and covered in dirt. Its ribs were showing, and its legs trembled with exhaustion. It looked as though it had been abandoned, left to fend for itself. Elias's heart went out to the poor creature, and without a second thought, he approached the pig. "Poor thing," Elias muttered, kneeling down beside the animal. "You must be hungry, aren't you?" He gently stroked the pig's head, and with a soft grunt, the pig looked up at him, its eyes filled with a mix of fear and exhaustion. Elias knew what he had to do. He couldn't leave the pig to die alone on the road. Without hesitation, he lifted the animal in his arms and carried it back to his cottage. Chapter 2. Caring for the pig. Elias made sure the pig was fed and watered. He gave it a warm place to rest near his fireplace, where it could recover from the cold and the hunger. Over the next few days, Elias did everything he could to nurse the pig back to health. He didn't have much to offer, but what he had, he shared. A little bit of vegetable scraps, some milk from his own cows, and a cozy blanket to keep the pig warm. Slowly but surely, the pig began to regain its strength. It no longer trembled when it stood up, and its once sunken eyes began to shine with a renewed energy. Elias watched in quiet satisfaction as the animal grew healthier each day. It seemed to trust him now, following him around the small garden and curling up by the fire at night. The bond between them grew stronger. But life wasn't always easy for Elias. The weather was unpredictable, and some days were harder than others. He still had to work hard in his fields, even though the harvest wasn't as bountiful as it had been in years past. The winters were long, and the cold winds often found their way into his home, no matter how tightly he closed the door. But through it all, Elias never wavered in his generosity. He continued to help others in the village, even though he himself was often struggling to make ends meet. The villagers admired Elias for his kind heart. They knew that no matter how much hardship he faced, he would always lend a helping hand. But no one could have known how much Elias's kindness would come to change his life. One particularly harsh winter, when snow blanketed the village and the wind howled through the trees, disaster struck. A terrible blizzard rolled in from the mountains, and the snow piled up so quickly that it became nearly impossible to leave the village. Roads were blocked, and many people in the village were left stranded in their homes without enough food or firewood to last through the storm. Elias knew that he had to help. He gathered what little food he had left and made his way to the homes of his neighbors, delivering supplies where he could. The snow was so deep that he had to wade through it, nearly up to his knees. It took all his strength to make it to each house, but he didn't stop. His heart was determined to make sure no one went without. When he returned home, Exhausted but grateful that he had done his part, he noticed something strange. The pig, which had grown strong and healthy, was standing at the door of his cottage, looking out into the storm. Elias felt a strange sense of calm as he approached the animal. "Are you waiting for something, friend?" he asked softly. To his surprise, the pig gave a soft grunt and turned to walk towards the back of the cottage. Elias followed, curious. There, near the edge of the yard, the pig began to dig at the snow, using its snout to root around in the snowbank. Elias watched in disbelief as the pig continued to dig, revealing a large pile of firewood buried beneath the snow. The pig had somehow found it, and Elias was able to use it to keep his home warm during the storm. Chapter 3. The Reward of Kindness. As the storm raged on outside, Elias realized that the pig had done something remarkable. Not only had it helped him find the firewood he needed to survive the storm, but it had also proven something that Elias had known all along, that kindness and compassion, no matter how small, were always rewarded in ways one could never expect. The villagers, who had been struggling in the storm as well, soon came to Elias's cottage, looking for help. They had heard about the pig's miraculous discovery of firewood, and they came to Elias not just for warmth and food, but to express their gratitude for his generosity. Elias shared what little he had with his neighbors, and together they made it through the storm. When the weather finally cleared, the village was left in awe of the events that had unfolded. They saw Elias's kindness and the pig's extraordinary act of helping him, and it reminded them of the power of selflessness. Over time, the villagers began to realize that kindness was the true wealth that Elias had always possessed. It was a wealth that couldn't be measured in coins, but in the hearts of those who had been touched by his actions. Elias's reputation grew, and with it, his life began to change. Though he never sought fame or riches, he found that the love and respect of his neighbors were worth more than anything money could buy. He had, through his selflessness and his bond with the pig, become a man who was truly wealthy in ways that mattered most.